Okay, welcome everyone. We'll get started. Just as a few housekeeping rules, please leave your questions and answers at the end of the call. You can unmute at the bottom if you wish to have a question or wish to participate. There's also a Q&A chat function, and we'll be able to get to your question that way as well. My name is Shahela Begum, and I'm the program director for the Long Island Sound Community Impact Fund. Thank you for joining us today for our grant writing training webinar. We have with us Connor Yakaitis. He is the development director for the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters, which is a statewide environmental nonprofit based in Hartford. He has been there for 4 years and has written and secured countless grant proposals at a variety of funding levels from a few hundred dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars. He also developed the organization's 4-year strategic plan and outlines the vision, goals, and mission for CTLCV's work. His prior experience includes working for a number of political campaigns where he both fundraised and helped shape their respective campaign platforms. And he also volunteers as the fundraising coordinator for Jericho Circle Project, which is a Massachusetts-based nonprofit dedicated to trauma healing and the successful reentry of incarcerated citizens. So I'll pass it on to Connor and we can get started.
Thank you so much, Shahela. It's great to be with you all today. It's a privilege to be able to share some insights into the grant writing process, especially building a narrative. So I want to start things out with an icebreaker. I'd love for everyone to throw your name in the chat, as well as the organization you work for, and maybe one sentence that describes why you work for the organization that you do. And I'm on presentation mode right now with a slideshow, so I can't see the chat, but I think it's a really, really good welcome for everyone to get to know each other. And it's like at its broadest sense, it's a great introduction to building your story, which is essentially what I'm going to walk you through today. So I want to give a special thanks to Shahela, as well as Alex Rodriguez, who initially connected me with this project. And he gave a great presentation last week about project design and building partnerships, which is awesome. I'm not sure if you've all seen it yet, but you absolutely should check it out. And then special thanks to the Long Island Sound Community Impact Fund, which includes Restore America's Estuaries, the EPA, and the Long Island Sound Study. And then I also want to thank my own organization, CTLCV, Connecticut League of Conservation Voters, who supports me doing this. And that is the organization that, as Shahela mentioned, I've been working for 4 years. And that's where I got most of my experience that I get to share with you all today. And then finally, I want to thank you all for being here. Storytelling really, at its core, it starts with you. And that's going to be the main point that I emphasize today. So we'll keep moving. Whoops. Just some questions I want you all to consider throughout this whole presentation, and as you go through, drafting this grant proposal and any other grant proposal in the future. When you're thinking about building your narrative, you want to ask yourself, what would I change in the world? There's obviously a lot going on right now. Whether it's environmental issues or, we obviously have yet another global conflict kind of being created. There's just so much going on. What's that one thing that, that gives you that spark? Secondly, what gives you hope? When we talk a lot about how we frame our narrative, you can talk about the issues, which in many cases are very, depressing and get you down. That's good, but you always want to end on a hopeful note, right? We all want to inspire change in the world. You want to inspire change in the world. So really think about, like, where are the positives? And then thirdly, how can I share my story with others to make the biggest impact? That is going to be the biggest key as you move forward and apply for, this grant opportunity, other grant opportunities. It's all about connecting with other people. As a big theme, and not only this grant proposal, but pretty much everywhere else is, equity and justice. And in order to get to the root of that, we need to be able to share a story with other people, find similarities. So I would just ask that you, keep these in mind as you continue your fantastic work. So as Shahela mentioned, this is kind of my very broad resume. I'm the current development director for CTLCV. Been here for 4 years, so I manage all of our grant writing, connections with major donors, our membership, just anything that involves income. I'm in charge of, which is really great. It's a great opportunity. We are an environmental organization based in Hartford, and we aren't really the point person on one specific issue necessarily, but what we do a really great job at is convening people. So we actually host an annual environmental summit in January, and that gathers lawmakers, the governor, a bunch of other nonprofits together to really have a conversation about, what are going to be the priorities for the next year. Through my position, I developed our 4-year strategic plan. I don't know if any of you have done that for your organizations, but it's a really transformative experience where building a narrative for the organization is at the heart of a strategic plan. So I had the privilege to do that. I worked with our board, our staff, some of our major funders, and we really talked about, what's the vision for the next 4 years for our organization, and what role do each of us play in that. And then, number of years grant writing. I did fundraising. I worked for a number of political campaigns, which is as stressful as it sounds. If any of you have done that before, bless you. It is quite the work. And then, as Shahela mentioned too, in my free time, I also help with the Jericho Circle project, which we volunteer and go into prisons and meet with incarcerated individuals and do trauma healing, and also help them with reentry. So that is something I'm just extremely passionate about. So I wanted to start off as well with a quote by Maya Angelou. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Each of us has a background, a life experience, and that's what makes us unique. We all have passions, everything. And we all want to say something. We all want to do something. That's why you're all here. That's why you're working for the organization that you do right now, hopefully. So it's really important that we get that out. And how you get that out can lead to all kinds of funding opportunities, like the one that you're all hopefully applying for. I want to shift back. This is not going to be all about me, I promise, but I want to show you the difference between the last slide I showed you with my resume. That's the professional version of me. This is my narrative. This is the thing that is, may not necessarily be on the surface on a professional level, what people care about. But when you tell your story, that's what people want to hear. And not just for you, but as your organization, what makes it tick? Where are the passions? Where's the energy? I'm a dog dad. I have a yellow lab named Dakota, as you can see. I'm in a band. I play gigs once or twice a week. I spent a year traveling with my family, and when I was a freshman in high school, visiting 35 national parks. For me, in the job that I do now, that's really what sparked my care for the environment, to go to the edge of the Grand Canyon and see that. And, there are special places, including within Long Island Sound, that we're all passionate about, that we care about. I also got the amazing opportunity to spend a few weeks in Standing Rock. For any of you that don't know, it's out in North and South Dakota, right at the border, when they were trying to build a pipeline, which they did, but there were big protests. They ended up getting part of it shut down, but I got to spend time out there fighting for that, which is another reason why I so passionately care about the environment. And then on any given day, not so much these days, because it's fall, but on any day in the summer, you can find me somewhere along the Long Island Sound. So I wanted to share these attributes with you, just to compare that to my professional resume, because you all have like those unique attributes and passions, and that's where your story starts from. If you think of it based off of, showing you my resume and then showing you my narrative. If you think of all of this as a job interview, the narrative is your cover letter. And in this case, it's the letter of intent for this grant opportunity. So you don't have to dive into the weeds of it. You're trying to sell, your vision and your passion, because grant funders are going to go through so many different, applications, but they start with a cover letter. Some might just get tossed out right at the cover letter alone. You want to sell your vision as concisely as possible. You also want to strike an emotional and personal tone. You really want to connect with whoever that person who's going to be reading it is, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and it's really important that you really, go to the heart. You want to connect authentically. That's, you don't want to just sell your organization as like a brand. You really want to get to the passion and authenticity of what makes your organization so unique. And then you want to grab their attention. And then when we get to the grant application, which will, come later, that's like your resume. That's where you dive into the numbers, the data, this is how many people we serve, this is what we can do. But it's really, we're just focusing on that cover letter. You really just want to come up with a narrative that is emotionally and authentically charged. So it's important to know that your personal story, because I don't know the backgrounds of the organization that you're with, it really starts with your personal story, because that will equal your organization's story. How your organization is run, the vision, the mission, the goals, it's a collective embodiment of each individual that works for that organization. So a good story should make people feel, as I mentioned earlier, striking that emotional chord is one of the most important things you can do. We all work for, nonprofits and organizations that are passionate about a certain issue. And that passion can lead to anger. It can lead to rage. I tell people all the time, I'm extremely pissed off, quite frankly, with how our environment, the state of our environment, and it just seems to be getting worse. Use that anger, strike that chord to produce results. You want to be remembered. You want to stand out. People remember a powerful story, and I would invite you all to think of the most powerful story that you've heard from either a friend, a colleague, a neighbor, someone in the past year. Think about how that made you feel, and you remember it because of that. You want to create an understanding. Stories really are at the root of who we are as humans. I'm sure we're all aware that back since the dawn of time of humanity, people were sitting around a fire telling stories. And that's how you relate to one another. You want to be able to cut through the clutter. And this one is incredibly important because it seems like every single day, new technologies are coming out. We are more interconnected, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. I feel like people rely too much on technology, which can lead to disinformation. People crave genuine stories these days, and you have a great opportunity to present yourself as authentic and genuine and as the real deal. And then you want to build organizational structure. That is where you take that connection and you really connect with your audience. You want people to know, people that are going to either support you through volunteering, or they're going to make even a small contribution, or in this case, a large grant. You want to make sure that they feel like they're heard, their concerns are heard, and you take that passion and energy that you have, and you make a difference. And then you want to wake people up. And I know, especially on the online culture, this idea of being woke. But stories create emotion, they inspire, they anger, and most importantly, they give hope. And that's what really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to sell. We all have an idea on the problems we want to fix. And like I said earlier, that anger and the sadness that can come up with the issues that we all face, you want to end it with hope. Because there should be hope. Tips for building a narrative. You want to keep it short and keep it sweet. People, especially as we get more digitally connected, naturally have shorter attention spans, especially in today's world. You see Facebook ads, YouTube videos, TikTok. I don't even have a TikTok, but I know that's a big thing these days. It's all short and sweet. The simpler, the better. You also want to show and not tell. You want to connect, again, emotionally to tell your stories. Don't get too caught up in the details. Like I said, that's the resume portion. That's the application. Almost every single grant application that I've ever applied to will have a place where you provide metrics and you provide target audiences and stuff like that. Building your narrative doesn't have to involve that. You can take a couple of numbers if you want. Maybe, I know I'm skipping ahead, but like 3 max to present like, hey, this is what we can do. So thinking of it as a story versus an essay, anyone should be able to write their narrative in a page. Maybe start with 2 pages, but I would challenge you to narrow it down to a page, even a paragraph. You want to be original, as I mentioned, be authentic, stand out. You want to look ahead. Any funding opportunity that comes your way is going to not just want to hear about your past, they're going to want to know that the money they provide has a clear and bright future. So always be thinking of the impact you've already had, the work you're currently doing, but most importantly, where you're going and why the money that you're going to receive is going to get you there. And then, of course, diversity and equity. That's especially been, at least in the environmental world, has been more and more prominent over the past few years. The environmental issues that we face is absolutely a diversity and equity issue. The same communities that are most impacted, financially, economically, are also the same ones that have the biggest impacts from climate change, from pollution. It all ties together. So always thinking about that. The communities that environmental justice communities is what we refer to them as, and there are many, at least in Connecticut and along the Long Island Sound. They're the same racial disparities that take place, and voting rights, for instance, the same barriers to voting are the same communities that need a voice when it comes to the environment. So I'm keeping this brief, the slideshow presentation brief, on purpose, because what I'd like to do is open it up and do a conversation. And through my training and my work, I've found it most impactful when everyone gets a chance to share their stories, take a practice run at it. Who are you? Why do you work for this organization? But some next steps when you take all of this back to your organization, you should write down 5 reasons why you love your job. And think about the mission, goals, and values of your organization and how that aligns to your own personal mission, values, and goals. What stories have come up during your experience, your life experience, not just your work experience, but think about, times when you were a kid, something that was really, really impactful. And then think about the most impactful thing that's happened at your organization. How did that change you? How did you feel? And then I would strongly encourage each of you to ask, your board and your staff, have this conversation, because we can very often, and I'm guilty of this as well, get caught up with, the mundane day-to-day tasks that we have to do. As nonprofits, the work never ends. Trust me, I know that. I know you can all relate to that. But it's really important to get together every once in a while, whether it's once a month or, have like a board staff retreat. Get together and share your personal experiences. And I promise you're going to find and discover that you share a lot more in common with the people that you work with than you think, even if you already think that you do. And then you'll learn so much from each other. And then try to identify patterns, similarities as an organization. See if you can take what you all share with each other and boil it down to, 3 to 5 different values. That's going to shape the direction of your organization. That's going to write your narrative, and that's going to sell yourself as an organization to a funder. And then these, like I mentioned, these will shape your ultimate goals, mission, and reasons why you deserve funding. A funder is going to see that authenticity. They're gonna feel that emotional spark, and they're going to fund you. And I would recommend that you reach out beyond your organization, with staff and board. Talk to your volunteers. Try to find 3 people that maybe aren't even a part of your organization yet, but to have that conversation with you. Hey, I work for this. I want to clean up this river or this beach. I know my friend wants to do the same, has expressed that. Join them in the conversation. These are the most important ways that you can shape a narrative that is both personally your own and as an organization unique. With that, I think I don't know if I rushed through that, but I would love to open it up. I know we have a great group today, so if we could open it up and just have a conversation, each person maybe spend 2 to 3 minutes to talk about your story and why you're here. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I hope that this was informative, and I will stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Connor. You should be able to use your mic to speak or the chat option, and we can also take any questions you have and also just have an open dialogue.
I'm also just looking through the chat now because my presentation was open.
And I think you're also able to come on video if you choose to. There's also that option.
And I can also throw questions out there as well. I assume everyone here is going to be applying for this grant opportunity. I would ask, what is the biggest challenge that you think you're facing in preparing for this grant opportunity? And that can either be through chat or on camera.
There's always also the option of scheduling 30-minute calls with me on our website. Oh, I see Allison has said, I think a big challenge to grant writing in general is how to narrow down all the big ideas people have to small, measurable chunks.
Yeah, I know a lot of nonprofits, mine in particular. I'm sure you can all relate to this. There's so many different program areas you might be focusing on. I think in the case of this RFP, it's important to boil it down to 1 or 2, keep it simple, and just really talk about the day-to-day impacts that you have as an organization. I think is really important.
I also want to mention, Allison, that for this RFA, organizations can apply for multiple projects. They would just have to be different sets of LOIs or applications. So if you find yourself having multiple ideas that you would like funding for, I encourage you to do that as well. And if it all doesn't fit within one project. And for that, you could be the main applicant, you could partner with other organizations. That's also possible. Does anyone else have any questions? Samaya. Samaya says, I find it hard to balance passion and the facts of the program. It's a really good question.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you're not ripping your hair out, then you're not working for a true nonprofit. Yeah, it can be very difficult. But like I said, if you take this opportunity as focus on the LOI first. Don't worry about the numbers and metrics and everything will come later. Really just focus on your mission statement, your values. So that's what I would recommend.
And we also have an upcoming webinar sometime next year about just data and database development, and how you can apply that to reporting. Because I feel like one of the things that really gets funders is to kind of like what you said, Samaya and Connor, just to be able to back up a lot of that narrative with data. Sometimes it's what they're looking for. So it's a great
Yeah.
comment. Okay, Christine said, I'm wondering if you might be able to share the use an example of a successful narrative that hit all of the points you discussed.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had this one funder in Connecticut that we got introduced to, who was looking to, fund some environmental work, but then really, over the years get more and more involved. So they recently just got back to us and is giving us, the most amount of money they ever had. Um, and really we had to put together a whole RFP for them. Even though we've known them for a few years, they know our work, but they want to see, how do we take it to the next level? So we met with them in person a couple times, and we also, if you ever have an opportunity, we brought them to the Capitol because we do a lot of legislative work as well. We basically gave them like this is a day in the life. We introduced them to lawmakers, but what really I think hit home is seeing the tangible impacts of what their funding would go to. And we actually broke it up. We said, this portion of funding is going to print this number of materials or provide access to these materials to these communities. Really, bringing it down to like a grassroots level, I find is very, where what area of the Long Island Sound you're all from, the closer to home you can bring it and like narrow in on a specific geographical location, like, hey, we're going to clean up this river, is really, really important. And then also, that those conversations were only made possible because we were able to be authentic, and I was able to talk to the executive director of that foundation and say, look, this is my background, this is why I'm here. And then she would say, well, this is why I have this amount of money, and why I choose to dedicate it to these focal areas. So yeah, the authenticity, it's just really about making, I hope that, is enough detail. It's really just about making it authentic and true. And then, the numbers are just coming up now for this funding. They've already committed to funding us. And now the next step is for me to provide them with the numbers. So that's an example of, you don't have to overwhelm them with all sorts of data and statistics off the bat. You just have to sell yourself and that vision that you have for both yourself and the organization. And then, that'll come later. And now she's telling me like, oh, we've already committed this amount of funding, but I'd like to see exactly, what does that look like? So it's a good example of that coming next.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Connor. It's amazing. Are there any other questions or something that you'd like to share out?
And I will add too, I provided Shahela with a handout, which also it provides a bunch of like introductory questions that you can ask when you're thinking about your narrative. I think they're important questions that you and your staff and board should be asking themselves consistently. And my contact information is on there. If you ever want to, run your LOI or narrative by me, I'm always available. It may take a little time. I provided my cell phone number too. If you call me, I probably won't pick up because of spam. Initially, please leave me a voicemail or shoot me a text, but I promise you I will call you back. I just get so many calls from numbers I don't recognize that I stopped answering them. But I'm always happy to, be a resource and help guide you through that, this process.
And in addition, we'll have this recording up on our website. I'm going to post the link over here for the Listgift events and trainings. And the handout will be available along with the slides. We also have a budget training webinar coming up on Monday at 11 a.m. So if you have a project idea and you're wondering how to kind of write it out, do the budget breakdown, Sarah Smith, who is our grants administrator, will be leading that webinar. And I'll just see a few more minutes if anyone has any questions, concerns, comments. And if you are in the process of writing your LOI and you need assistance with tying it back to the CCMP, please feel free to schedule one of those calls with me and my information is on the website as well.
Yeah, and I would recommend again, next staff meeting that you all have, ask some of those questions. Start it off a good icebreaker. Why are you all here? I think it's a great, not in like a negative way, but really just like, I think it's important that people reflect inward, like what was my journey to get to here and where do I want to see that journey go? And if you're able to do that and, refine that, the floodgates of funding will open. I assure you that.
Yeah, great. So if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Connor, for sharing all your knowledge with us. And there's also a resource section on the website where you can also pull up examples of impact models and how to tie it back to the CCMP along with that. Thank you so much. And we'll have another webinar for grant writing for the full proposal in January or February. As we get closer to the date, we'll send that information out. So thank you so much for everyone for attending. Thank you, Connor. Thanks, Rob, for doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, my door is always open and, feel free to reach out, please.